Okay, we're going to kick it off. Welcome everybody to the Small Communities, Big Solutions session on workforce development. My name is Brandon Dennison. I'm the founder and CEO of Coalfield Development. We are based in Southern West Virginia with a headquarters in Wayne, West Virginia, and in Wayne County. And our organization's approach is to establish social enterprises and use those social enterprises to put people back to work. And we support individuals who face barriers to employment through personal, professional, and academic development. A lot of you may know about our 33, 6, and 3 model. And a lot of you may also know about our RAPS program, which stands for Workforce Readiness and Professional Success. So this is a topic that's really, really important to me and really, really important to the future of our state and of our region. And the panel we have lined up today, I really could not be more excited. These are people that I know and trust and that have been working on these issues for decades. If you add up the experience, it's easily exceeds 50 years, and it's getting close to 100 of combined years experience on workforce development issues here in Southern West Virginia. So we're going to learn a lot. We are looking for a good deal of audience interaction through the chat function. So all questions are going to be through the chat. Sarah and I both, and Brittany as well, are going to be keeping an eye on that. The format is each of our panelists is going to have a few minutes at the top to say who they are, what they do, and I've asked them to think about a workforce development solution that they are feeling really excited about right now. And then I have a couple questions in my back pocket for each of the panelists, but really we're hoping to get as much engagement with the audience as possible. So again, thank you everybody for being here. Fire those questions off at the chat function at any point in time. And we expect to have at least half the end of the session for just audience Q&A. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Scott Adkins, who's the head of Workforce West Virginia, right in the heart of these issues for our state. Mr. Adkins, if you could just tell us who you are, what you're working on, and a solution that you're particularly excited about right now.
Yeah, absolutely, Brandon. First of all, thanks for the opportunity and thanks for all the work that you and Sarah and all your teams have done to put this activity and this event together. So it's a privilege to be here. And it's always a good opportunity when I can talk about workforce. Before I really get into some of the things that we're working on, what I thought I would do is just kind of give you an update of where we're at, because everybody who didn't know about unemployment has learned about unemployment since March of this year. So I thought I would talk about unemployment generally first, because it really dictates and sort of positions us for where we need to get to in thinking about what we've experienced over the past 7 months. In 2019, West Virginia's annual average unemployment rate stood at 4.9%. And actually that was the lowest annual average unemployment rate since 2008. So we're in pretty good position as we started 2020. The labor force participation rate was at an all-time high. March's labor force participation rate, and I know Reverend Watts and I talk about this frequently, but stood at 57.1% as we broke into March of this year, which was actually the highest since records started being kept in January of 1976. So we were in pretty good shape as a state when it came to unemployment and as it came to the labor force participation rate. But as most of you know, by April, the economy reflected the damage caused by the pandemic, with the state's unemployment rate climbing to 15.9%. And at one point in April, we had well over 120,000 people who were out of work and drawing unemployment benefits in West Virginia. Just to put that in perspective, normally in any given year, we take about 45,000 claims. To date, since March the 15th, Workforce has taken nearly 500,000 claims for unemployment benefits. So the pandemic has really hit our state pretty hard. Since April, we've seen the unemployment rate decline slightly each month. The September rate was 8.6%. The October rate is actually due out tomorrow, so I expect that number to creep down a little bit more. in September of 2020, total employment stood at 707,200. That's the highest it's been since March of 2020 as well. So as you look at the economy and you look at the unemployment and the civilian workforce, I think West Virginia is on our way to recovery. While it's expected to decline from September, it will still be well above the October 2019 rate of 5.1%. Lots of challenges for both businesses, many of you are affiliated with, as well as job seekers. Businesses must navigate the financial and operational challenges of coronavirus while rapidly addressing needs of workers, customers, and suppliers. When you think about workforce development, I think you have to think about all those factors. Companies must outmaneuver uncertainty by course correcting again and again, over and over as circumstances change. And I think most of us on this call have learned to work that way. This requires businesses to reassess assumptions, reevaluate scenarios, and strengthen their ability to sense and respond accordingly. Virtually all companies are still determining how we'll work in the short and long term, as well as workforces and communities try to function and perform, while at the same time still struggling to cope with what's happening in their daily lives. And if you listen to the governor's press conferences 3 days a week, you can see that the coronavirus still continues to wreak havoc on West Virginia and in the workplace. We're seeing workforce and workforce shifts, such as the urgent need to shift to a remote workforce to protect and empower employees, serve customers, and to establish business continuity. And this Zoom meeting is a perfect example of that. West Virginia lost nearly 93,000 jobs from April of this year through September of this year. Older and younger workers have been hardest hit by job cuts, and many people of all ages have taken jobs in different industries just to make ends meet, while others are underemployed and struggling to pay the bills despite still being in the workforce. Job seekers are forced to rethink their job search strategies and reskill in many instances. Workers, organizations, and communities must develop plans, and I think some of the things that we'll talk about today are those plans. But workers, organizations, and communities must develop plans and strategies today that can evolve as global health and economic environments changes. Businesses, governments, and workers all play critical roles in establishing human-centered, systems-minded approaches that provide shared workforce resilience. And so with that being said, you know, again, it's a privilege for me to participate with such esteemed folks on the call today, and I'll be happy to take any questions once we get to that point. Brandon?
Good. Thank you so much, Mr. Adkins, for being here, and we're going to have a lot of questions for you as the day goes on. Thank you for that update too. That's a helpful way to sort of start off with the facts on the ground and some data to back that up. So really appreciate the report. And next we have Mr. Dave Lavender here with us today out of the development office and working on some job training specific programs. Mr. Lavender, welcome.
Thank you, Brandon. And thank you guys so much for inviting me to be here. You know, not just part of this panel, but part of this really inspirational conference. Brings together so many, as Brandon said this morning, the proximate leaders, or as I call them, the live wires, you know, the people that are really sparking good things in Southern West Virginia. And I'd like to say, Scott's team's just an all-star effort this year. He's had to pivot more than LeBron James. It's been incredible. They've done a great job. And, you know, one of the things I like to say about West Virginia is we're better together. You know, we may not have all the resources ourselves, but in the sweet spirit of the late, great Bill Withers, you know, we can model that lean on me with everyone coming and sharing resources to create real transformative and lasting change. You know, as the West Virginia Development Office, you know, we're still riding high on the announcement of the Virgin Hyperloop. As you heard from Secretary Gantz this morning, you know, the fact that we got into the game in the third quarter, so to speak, and West Virginia was still able to bring everyone together across all the aisles, universities, sectors, and organizations to be on the same team and to weave in some real resources and an honest story that was able to convince Virgin Hyperloop to bring its global brand and innovations to West Virginia. I do think it's a game-changing sign of great things to come. And as our hashtag reads, it's hashtag yes West Virginia, yes Dov V. And it's with that kind of same eye for innovation and redefining West Virginia's workforce future that new Apprenticeship in Motion, or AIM-W teams, have just been launched this year. Yeah, what a great time to launch anything, right? So, but here we are. And so I, myself and another coworker, Leanne Stowers, are at the West Virginia Development Office. And then the Community and Technical College systems have 5 people embedded with the CTCs to help expand apprenticeship opportunities in West Virginia. And so as intermediaries, we're working with the U.S. Department of Labor Apprenticeship Office here in West Virginia. They have 4 reps. And we're doing what I call, as a preacher's son, kind of doing discipleship work. We're spreading the gospel about this new generation of apprenticeships in the United States, where everyone, and we do mean everyone, from Amazon, Google, Intuit, and even Dollywood is utilizing the apprenticeship model. So we're not only spreading the word, but we're connecting companies to funding resources and deliberate pipelines of fresh workers, whether they're coming out of the high school CTEs or the CTCs or displaced workers. We're giving them apprenticeship opportunities. So here in West Virginia, the CTC team is concentrating on IT, while our development office is focused on a broader base of non-traditional sectors. So we're doing IT, aerospace, healthcare, and a lot of other sectors as well. Now, so far, we're already funding and standing up registered apprenticeships for airline mechanics, Mitsubishi, Heavy, IT and cybersecurity apprentices at IBM Rocket Center, union-trained solar electrician apprentices at Solar Holler, and earlier this month, we just signed up the state's first vet tech apprentices at Allegheny Equine in Adkins. So one of the great things about an apprenticeship is that it helps a company go from being a consumer of talent, praying that the right person comes along, to being a producer of talent and molding the right person right out of the gates. For a student or a displaced worker, it takes the guesswork and the anxiety out of that question. If I go to school or if I get retrained, will I have a job in my field of study? So just to give a good example of how this direct and collaboratively planned educational and industry pipeline of apprenticeship can work is the tech company Intiva. So they teamed up with WVUP to create a pre-apprenticeship program for IT students to work at a computer help desk run jointly by the company and the college. So that program lets students take what they're learning in the classroom and then apply it directly to a part-time job in their field while building their soft skill sets as well. So as those students have progressed, our AIM-W team, we've stepped in with the US DOL, and we have set up a registered apprenticeship. So as those students begin their full-time and upwardly mobile journey into the company, they have started a career. Now, to help pay for apprenticeship, West Virginia has great bookends of funding. So students are utilizing the Learn and Earn, which pays a company for half of the wages while they're in school. And then at the development office, we're bringing in our governor's guaranteed workforce funds to reimburse companies for up to 50% of their training costs. So the DOL reps in West Virginia have told me this is the first time that a pre-apprenticeship has been rolled straight into a registered apprenticeship. And this is the model that, regardless of the field, this is what we want to create at all the other community and technical colleges and with industries across West Virginia. The one quick other success story that I'm really excited about, since I came on board in January, one of the things I've been looking at is how do we feed fast-growing sectors with workers? And so at the Education Day at the Capitol in January, I met Bridge Valley chemistry professor Michael Parsons. And he had what some might think of as a novel or silly idea, a 2-year brew tech program to teach all aspects of the brewing industry. So Parsons and I immediately teamed up with the US DOL Apprenticeship Office, and we built out the first brewer's apprenticeship in the state and one of only a handful in the country. And here's why. In 2010, there were fewer than 5 craft breweries in West Virginia. By 2019, that number had exploded to 28 breweries, not counting cideries, wineries, or distilleries, with a collective impact on West Virginia of $289 million. Together, the beverage industry is ranked 10th in economic impact among sectors, and it is the Mountain State's second fastest growing manufacturing field. Now, in 2020, this recession-proof industry has continued to expand. And so we've created a direct pipeline of apprenticeship so people interested in working in West Virginia's one of their swiftest growing manufacturing sectors can do so without leaving the state. So while brew students once had to go to industry trained at expensive programs in faraway states like Vermont and California and Colorado, this homegrown program is pipelining a generation of fresh cross-trained apprentices to to good paying jobs and careers in West Virginia's burgeoning industry. Now, breweries can also sign up existing employees who want to broaden their skill sets and who also, or they can teach new employees from the ground up through our proven and flexible model of apprenticeship. So while the first semester of Bridge Valley course is just about in the books, enrollment is now open for the spring semester, which begins in January. And already we have one of the students, Samantha Fox, who's going to be an apprentice at Greenbrier Valley Brewing Company, gaining some invaluable knowledge down there with Brian Ray Miller and their staff. In closing, here in the opening segment, I would just say I can't tell you how rewarding it is for me, a lifelong Appalachian and West Virginian by choice, to network and create these incredible new opportunities in the Mountain State. To me, apprenticeship represents the kind of sustainable growth and true opportunity that we want to build and create in the Mountain State. There's something sacred and ancient in the practice of a mentor passing on knowledge to the next generation of West Virginia workers who can put that knowledge to work, redesign their future and a career carved out right here in the hills of home.
Awesome. Really interesting work, Dave, and look forward to diving into that. That's yeah, that's some new approaches and good to hear about.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon.
And, next up, we have Reverend Watts, who's been working for a very long time. It's really statewide and quite a bit in the Charleston community as well. And Reverend Watts, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brandon. I wanted to thank you and Miss Sarah and your excellent team for putting together this excellent Small Communities, Big Solutions conference. And I certainly would echo the sentiments that my good friend Scott Adkins, he's at least on the all-star team, the COVID-19 all-star team. And I think he would probably get my vote for the MVP. But I think others have to vote as well. He's certainly on the all-star team. And it's really exciting to hear about Dave's work. And I want to kind of get a meeting with him off the side and have a real extensive conversation. Basically, Reverend Matthew J. Watts, I'm the pastor and the teacher of the Grace Bible Church of Charleston for the last 26 years. And I've also established Hope Community Development Corporation about 26 years ago as a nonprofit arm to try to promote education, employment, economic development, and spiritual renewal in one of West Virginia's most challenged neighborhoods, and that's the west side of Charleston. So I've given the best years of my adult life to this particular challenge, and I hope to finish up here in a few years. And so basically, another responsibility I've had for the last 20 years, that since 2000, I've served on the State Workforce Development Board. And I think I may be the longest tenured person there, maybe along with one of the individual. And so in that capacity, I've been able to work with previous executive directors. I'm really excited about this work now with Scott Adkins, because he has the vision and the passion, I believe, to help us to create a state-of-the-art workforce development system in the state of West Virginia. And I think the leadership that he's provided over the last year or so, pulling together Secretary Garnett's task force, we work very closely with him to help to shape the plan for the 4-year state workforce development plan, which I'm sure he would talk a little bit more, which serves as the basis for the 7 local workforce development plans in the 7 local regions. And so with my work, I focused a lot, as Scott referenced, on trying to bring attention to this challenge of improving the labor force participation rate in West Virginia. As Scott pointed out, we've had the lowest labor force participation rate in the nation since 1976, was making some progress before COVID-19 hit, but now we still are dealing with that issue. And I've tried to clearly find why we have the lowest labor force participation rate, and what are some of the specific things that we could do and that we should be doing to improve the labor force participation rate in West Virginia. Because it's obvious with all that we've done for the last 50 years that we still are at the bottom in terms of labor force participation. It suggests that there are some specific strategies that we have not considered, that we've not employed, that may be critical for us moving the needle and actually increasing the labor force participation rate in West Virginia. And we hope to talk a little about some of those things a little bit later. One of the things that we've taken on the west side of Charleston, my home community, is to try to create a comprehensive plan for community development, for family development. And we're looking at through this lens, right, of the latest research by the University of Wisconsin Public Health Institute and the Robert Johnson Foundation, of looking at everything through the lens of how do you improve community and population's health? How do you improve the community people of the community, the health of the community and of the people that reside there? And so this term has now been batted about, the social determinants of health, things like income, things like education levels, quality of housing, the quality of the air and the water and the environment that are there, access to healthcare. So we put together a comprehensive plan, which we hope to be able to share with other communities around Southern West Virginia, that we call the West Side Revive Movement, the comprehensive plan of how to improve the community population's health by addressing poverty, substance abuse, housing, education, workforce, economic development, and other social terms of health through comprehensive community development, which is place-based and people-focused. And we believe that this approach can be applied anywhere in West Virginia, particularly in the 21 counties in the southern part of the state, which I'm the most familiar with, being a Southern West Virginia coal miner son, that could, over time, not only improve labor force participation, but to improve the community and population's health. I close with this. West Virginia has one of the sickest population, one of the most unhealthy population in the United States. As a matter of fact, the community where I reside have the 27th lowest life expectancy. Logan is ranked number 2 nationally. Hinton is number 9. West South Charleston and West Huntington tied for 27th, and Salem 39. So this is periodically we're the lowest, some of the lowest and the poorest community populations health. And that's affecting our labor force participation. It ties right into it because we have one of, if not the highest percentage of our people with a disability. So we're saying we've got to look at improving the overall health of the community and the population that live there as an economic development strategy to have people healthier so they can participate in the labor force at their peak potential, and therefore not only realize a personal benefit, but also contribute to the economy. And we'll unpack a little bit later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Reverend Watson. Thank you for just your decades of amazing work on this issue. And now we're going to go to Charlotte Weber. Charlotte is the director of RCBI, which is on the cutting edge of workforce development in so many different ways. And I just am a big admirer of Charlotte's leadership and of the work of RCBI overall. Charlotte, tell us a little bit about what you've been working on, what RCBI is up to, and some solutions that you're really excited about right now.
Thank you, Brandon. And let me thank Sarah and Brittany and Eric for all the hard work in putting this conference together. This is certainly no easy feat. So thank you all very much. And thank you for inviting me. As Brandon said, I am the director of the Robert C. Byrd Institute at Marshall University. RCBI is a statewide and region-wide advanced manufacturing technology center. We partner with industry in a variety of ways. Some could say RCBI is a very unique organization in the state of West Virginia, and we have the luxury to partner with businesses, with other organizations, with all the institutions of higher education to be able to bring the best solutions to industry. Workforce development is very important. I think Brandon said earlier just what it means to him and how important workforce development is. I can honestly say to RCBI, it might be one of the most important services that we provide. For the past 30 years, and yes, here we are in 2020 and everything that 2020's brought us, but it has also brought us the 30th anniversary of RCBI. So not all is bad in 2020. We provide short-term skills training, 1- and 2-year national certification training. We partner with a variety of West Virginia community and technical colleges where that partnership allows us to offer 2-year associate degrees to our graduates that then we couple with the national certifications. We provide apprenticeship training a little bit differently than Dave described. However, our apprenticeship training goes all over the country. It's just not limited to West Virginia, but we are primarily focused on manufacturing. And probably one of the most important pieces of workforce development that we do is customized training, going into companies, providing companies what they need on site. And I am really pleased to also kind of ping off something that Scott said. During this 2020, we have found that people are interested in workforce training. They are interested in upgrading their skills. And our programs during 2020, during this COVID pandemic, are at an all-time high. People are interested in going to work and upgrading their skills to get the jobs they need. Brandon asked me to all of us to talk about a solution that kind of gets us excited. Well, I think that's really it, because I'm really excited when our workforce programs are credited with being able to bring a new business into West Virginia, or being able to allow an existing company to expand or diversify their product lines. At RCBI, we really believe that workforce development, workforce skills training changes lives. And we're really, really proud of the individuals who participate in our programs, have found employment, and many have actually started their own businesses. West Virginia is a great place to plant your roots, to start your own business. And as Dave said, we're all in this together. We all work together really well. I believe, at least from our perspective, we do, whether we're providing the technical skills training and others come in then to the picture and actually bring the added benefit of learning how to actually succeed in business. So I guess what really excites me the most, when it all comes down to it, when we can talk about all the details of every program we offer, it's when our workforce efforts really create jobs and change people's lives.
Fantastic. And Charlotte, we're going to go in reverse. So I'm going to throw the first question to you. And folks in the audience, you can start thinking about your questions through the chat function. I'll give each panelist one question, and then we'll start to go to the audience. So Charlotte, you talked about the importance of partnerships, and saying, you gave the example of how workforce development can actually help bring businesses into the state and choose to locate here. What are some of the keys to successful collaboration with the private sector, with the business community in particular?
Well, Brandon, thanks for that question. I think it's a very important question. I think it's the bottom line when you're talking about workforce development. And at RCBI, we think of working with industry basically. If you think about a stool and it has 4 legs, we think the very first component that you have to have when you're working with industry is trust. You have to trust with that industry. You deliver what that industry wants when it needs it, and you are present when you are there delivering it. I guess a second leg would be partnerships. You really have to understand the businesses that you are providing workforce skills training to. You need to actively, we believe, step in to that world that your future, that your trainees, their future employees will be working in. It's one thing to be able to provide the training, stand there in front of other people and then teach, but it's another to understand really what your skills training, what your workforce development efforts, and how they're going to impact that industry. Thirdly, collaboration. Obviously, it has to be a true collaboration, not only with industry, but with other organizations. We partner a lot with other organizations and collaborate with other organizations to offer the nationally recognized certifications. Something that we have found over and over and over throughout all these years, industry recognizes the national certifications. When Brandon, you or Reverend Watts, Scott walk into a business and they apply for a job and they have a specific certification, those employers understand what skill sets you have, how you can hit the ground running. And I guess lastly, one of the things that we feel are very, very important in workforce development in regard to partnering with industry is that you have to stay connected. Your work doesn't end when the training ends or when the individuals earn the certifications. You need to stay connected through employment forums, through hosting job fairs, through industry as they're changing their needs as they go along. You have to stay committed to the folks as they go throughout their employment, because remember, all the statistics that talk about how many times people change jobs, how many businesses, when they diversify their product lines, you need to be there connected with that business and ready to provide the next level of skill sets that they need. So we think it's very, very important to stay connected. These are our 4 pillars that have worked for us at RCBI as we've gone through our workforce skill sets. We believe they create a win-win-win, if you would, situation for those seeking employment, for the industry looking, and for the organization providing the training.
Yeah, I love your message on trust there. It's a simple strategy, and yet takes hard work to get it for real. Thank you, Charlotte. And Reverend Watts, a question to you. You know, a lot of our discussion on workforce development policy, it's at the federal level, right? We have WIOA, Workforce Opportunity Investment Act, the Unemployment Insurance Program. But I'm curious to hear from you. I know you've done a lot of work at the State House at a statewide level on workforce development. What policy-wise, what does the state of West Virginia need to be focused on to really make a difference on these issues?
Thanks for the question. I believe that we have an excellent system that most people just aren't aware of it. So one thing needs to happen is we have a major education campaign to educate all of West Virginia, businesses, higher education, potential workers, everyone on the state workforce development system, that there is a statewide comprehensive plan. There are 7 local workforce development regions, each one of them have their plan. That the cornerstone is the one-stop system, a physical place where a person can go as an individual seeking job training or employment services, or an employer can go and try to source candidates for employment. This system is something that needs to be better promoted. People need to understand it, and so they can engage and participate and they can support it. Secondly, I think from a more practical standpoint, is I believe that there needs to be funding made available from the state, allocate dollars to Workforce West Virginia, Scott Adkins' group, for them to expand employment opportunities for youth during the summers. The key policy thing we have to do is we've got to increase the education and the skill levels of youth that are graduating from high school. And we've got to provide them with job training and employment opportunities so they develop the work ethic so they can go into the apprenticeship program that Ms. Weber has, or go into the apprenticeship program that Dave Lavender are putting together. And right now, we're not doing that. I don't think that we really understand the crisis that we have now with youth. And I'll just quote a few things, right? In West Virginia, every year, there are probably 18 to 19 youth that are suspended from school. And that is now research shows that's the trigger that leads to truancy, it leads to dropout, it leads to delinquency, it leads to young people going into the adult criminal justice system, schoolyard, to prison pipeline. It leads to them being undereducated, underemployed, and sometimes unemployable. And so that issue has to be addressed. And there may be an opportunity to address it at the upcoming legislative session. There are some legislators now interested in taking a look at that. They realize how serious it is because it's depleting the workforce. Now, when I say that, people don't see the real connection, because the future of our workforce is the youth. That's who's going to plenish the workforce. Right now, we have the highest, we have the worst we rank number 6 in the country in terms of outcome for disconnected youth. That is youth that are not in school, not working, and not really in job training. And that's the pool that must fill our workforce needs moving forward. We have a high rate of juvenile delinquency and incarceration. Even though it's a small number, it's a high rate when compared to other states. And of course, we still have a problem with kids dropping out of school. And even those who graduate, right, don't have the skills, the literacy and numeracy skills to enter certain job training programs. And a high percentage of our young people graduating from high school cannot do college level work. So the policy issue that I'm trying to bring attention to is we have to focus with more laser precision and taking the steps necessary to provide remediation to our young people at earlier ages, and not just allow them to matriculate through the system and then graduate from high school and not be prepared for employment, job training, or college. We got to reconnect as many as we can with the 60,000 young people that are not in school and that are currently not working. And we've got to turn back this valve on this schoolyard to prison pipeline. So that's what we have to do. And if we don't do it, we will not be competitive in the future, because we're not producing enough young people with the basic literacy and numeracy skills to take advantage of the opportunities that the apprenticeship programs offer, the opportunities offered in the field of construction trades. On a local basis, and I'll close with this, that in a newspaper article in yesterday's paper, Mr. Howard Swint, I assume that he's accurate with his collection of data. He's been a part-time teacher up at Westside Middle School during the COVID-19 as they're trying to get back into school. And in the article yesterday, he says that 70% of the children at Westside Middle School, the school in my neighborhood, are reading on the 3rd grade level. 70% is what he said with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. What does that mean for them for the future? And what does it mean for us? And what are we going to do about it? And that's why I'm saying we have to take drastic steps to identify these children and get them in the type of academic remediation support that they need, because we have time with those young people, but we let them continue to progress forward in the system in the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, we don't have the time. And then they come out and they're not ready for employment, nor are they ready for the post-secondary education challenge opportunity that's currently before them. So focusing on young people and having a comprehensive plan to really develop this generation of young people has to be a priority. And right now, I don't think it is.
Striking point, Reverend. And yeah, that gives us a lot to think about. Those are some big challenges, and yet also some big opportunities. If we can unleash the potential that's in those schools, what it could mean for our state is exciting to think about. So along those lines, apprenticeships are an interesting pathway. So Dave, I'm curious, it seems like apprenticeships are, tell me if I'm wrong, it seems like they're pretty popular on both sides of the political aisle. Both conservatives and more liberal leaning folks seem to like the approach. Is that right? And if so, why is it that apprenticeships are so popular these days?
Well, I think, one of RCBI's programs says it all, the name of it, Apprenticeship Works. And RCBI has been proving that for 30 years. And it is probably maybe one of the only things that I can think of that the Obama and Trump administrations have agreed on. And there's going to be continuity over to the Biden administration. It's something that everyone agrees on. Obama put a record amount of money into expanding apprenticeships through the Department of Labor, and then Trump doubled down on that, and he's put a record amount of money into it. And so we're really just seeing unprecedented growth in the United States. So more than 847,000 apprentices have been added in the United States since 2017. There's been a 128% growth of apprenticeships since 2009. That's the good news. The bad news is kind of what Reverend Watts is saying, like what is the percentage of actually people getting into a good apprenticeship? And we are way, way off. Germany, we are not. And so our capacity for growth is maybe the exciting thing, and the thing that if we all get together and really get this thing plugged into our education systems, that we can really make a real difference in Southern West Virginia and beyond. So to give you an idea about our capacity for growth, if the US had as many apprenticeships per capita as Germany did, our system would have about 7 million apprentices. And so we got a lot of room to grow, and we got a lot of room to expand in West Virginia. Now, interesting, in West Virginia, we're actually ranked 8th in apprenticeships per capita when compared to the other states in the United States. So I think that the great thing about West Virginia is we have these amazing partners in place, the motherships, the US DOL that has 4 great reps here on the federal side. And then we got amazing training partners like RCBI, and also that sponsor apprenticeships all over the country in manufacturing, and WVMEP. And then we have great sponsors and partnerships on the education side in the CTCs. I think Reverend Watts is drilling down on something that we really need to get into, is like how do we get that message down further to kids earlier? I'll give you, for instance, I mean, when I was in college, I did 5 internships and 1 fellowship. There was a year-long fellowship that was part of that. But I was an oddball, right? Everybody needs to be doing that, and maybe doing that when they're part of the community college system, or first couple years that they're getting a 4-year degree. We need to have more people who are working in their degree field, and we need to have more education in our junior high schools, probably in particularly, to let kids know about opportunities. I did see Carol Bailey was on this call, and I know that that the United Way is working with Salvation Army in Cabell County to set up a kind of vocational, kind of themed after school program for junior high kids to let them know about opportunities. So I think we need to stand up more things like that to really let kids know about the opportunities, and the fact that they may be a good welder, or they may be a good solar electrician, and that kind of thing.
Thank you, Dave. And just real quick, what the difference between an apprenticeship, like a full apprenticeship, and a pre-apprenticeship? Could you just explain that for the audience?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So a pre-apprenticeship would be like a learn and earn, and while someone is still going to school. And typically an apprenticeship is somebody who is hired on full-time at a company, and they are then stacking up additional credentials or micro credentials as they kind of level up through a company. So like the for instance is, we always, with Intiva, so we have kids that are just getting started in their degree who are finding out if they might be a good fit for Intiva, work in the computer help desk at WVUP, and then once they're hired by the company, then we're taking over with a registered apprenticeship that would get them a federal certificate, and then also then we would help provide training dollars as well as they move into a more fully realized registered apprenticeship.
And some questions are starting to roll in through the chat function, which is good to see. And before we go to that, I do have a question for Mr. Scott Adkins. And Scott, I'm curious to what sectors are you seeing with the most activity for new workforce opportunities right now? What sectors of the economy seem to be showing the most promise?
Yeah, Brandon, that's a great question. When you take a look at traditionally what workforce is able to do using labor market information, we normally can predict out kind of those occupations that are going to be in demand 1 year out, 3 years out, 5 years out, etc. It's a little different now considering what's occurred over the past 7 months. But if you take a look at the occupations right now that we're projecting that's going to have the biggest need, and if you think about it, job creation happens in 2 fronts. One, either from job expansion or through turnover. And obviously from an economic perspective, the job expansion is the way West Virginia wants to go. And if you think about job seekers, and you heard Reverend Watts allude to it, you also heard Charlotte touch on it. And if you surveyed the 40,000 employers in West Virginia, the key for job seekers is really contingent upon 2 things. One, the skills of the job seeker, and also the motivation. Reverend Watts talked about that cultural change. If you can get folks to think a little differently about entering the workforce, and then if we can upskill them or get them prepared for the labor market, that's huge. But some of the sectors right now that are in high demand, if you look at the construction industry, construction laborers, both horizontal and vertical construction, operating engineers, heavy equipment operators, huge demand. The big roads initiative by Governor Justice has helped facilitate that in West Virginia. Food service sector has always been high, continues to be high. Food prep, waiters, waitresses, cook restaurants, those kind of things, but also the healthcare fields, the healthcare sector. That was big before COVID. It continues to be during COVID. There's a greater demand for those registered nurses, nursing assistants, and so forth. And so that's always going to be a huge sector in West Virginia to find job seekers for. Retail trade continues to be strong. If you're looking at salespeople, cashiers, stock clerks, order fillers, and then administrative related fields as well, secretaries, receptionists, bookkeepers, accounting. Accounting, oddly enough, is a huge field in West Virginia. And just thinking about that on the state perspective, for you folks who work in state government, you know how hard it is to find good accounting people. That you just can't find them. We're constantly recruiting and hiring accountants here at Workforce, so that's another huge sector for the labor market. And I thought I'd touch on just the top 10 healthcare related occupations that have the greatest number of annual openings in West Virginia. Again, I mentioned earlier, registered nurses, nursing assistants, licensed practical and licensed vocational nurses, medical assistants, home health aides, pharmacy technicians, and then it just goes on. And of course, in the education field, as you can imagine right now, school systems are struggling to find substitute teachers, bus drivers, teachers, teaching assistants. And so, you know, all those sectors are really are recruiting continually for job seekers. So those are kind of the high area occupations that are in demand in West Virginia right now.
Makes me think of the importance of some of the education partners, because some of those positions, you know, definitely require at least some higher ed. And so the learn and earn approach, if folks aren't familiar with that program from the Higher Education Policy Commission, Learn and Earn, it's a partnership between CTCs and employers to be able to, for employees to help pay them and also make sure that they can continue the education that they need and put some money behind that process. Hey, Charlotte, we have a good question here in the chat for Charlotte. What 1 to 2 national certifications do you see people most interested in right now, students as well as employers? And how does West Virginia compare to the nation?
Well, what a couple that we see right now, actually 3 if you would. The National Institute for Metalworking Skills, NIMS, is a national certification in manufacturing. And as I said, industry truly respects that certification. They actually came to the table. Our whole board of advisors are made up of industry, and they brought that certification to us. They understand what that means when someone walks in with that certification. The certifications in welding are also very popular right now. And both those certifications we couple with a 2-year associate degree from various community colleges. And just a quick little note of brag there, West Virginia was the first in the nation to actually couple the national certifications with associate degrees. And then one that we are quickly bringing on board is the FAA certification in aviation maintenance technology, which will be coming online very soon in Huntington, and we're very excited about that. And that too will be coupled with the first in the state joint associate degree offered from Mount West Community and Technical College and Marshall University. So when individuals graduate with that FAA certification, telling industry what their specific skill sets are, they will also be graduating with a joint diploma from Marshall University and Mount West Community and Technical College.
Good stuff. Perfect. So I'm keeping some notes here myself. And Reverend Watts had a question on health-related initiatives. And in particular, which initiatives do you think dispirited workers might be most receptive to? So yeah, I really like how you speak to those social determinants of health. And I appreciate how when you speak to workforce, you know, you really can't take the workforce in a silo, right? There are all these other systems that affect the workforce development system. You were speaking to the health system earlier, which I thought was really interesting. Are you seeing any good ideas there, or is it really more just alerting us to the need?
One of the best ideas that I see out there has been championed by a good friend of mine, it's fastly coming, one of my best friends, Ms. Sharon Lansdale with the Center for Rural Health Development. And she's put together a project that's called Wild, Wonderful, Healthy West Virginia. And what she's doing, she and her team, they're working throughout southern West Virginia, now in the northern part of the state, actually helping to bring together cross-sector collaboration of partners from health, mental health, public health, business, education, economic, everyone in the community coming together to say, let us help you develop a comprehensive health improvement plan. And so basically, she's working with us here on the west side of Charleston, and she's recently accepted us into the fold with the Wild, Wonderful, Healthy West Side initiative. And the ideal is to get everybody to buy in to the role that they play to try to create a healthier community and a healthier environment that we all share together. It's one of the most exciting things I've been involved in for a number of years. As we tried to retool our work, we began to realize that many people are operating in a silo. And one thing that's critical to workforce development is the health of the people. Unhealthy people are not going to be high energy, efficient employees. And when you look at the state of West Virginia, as I said earlier, we are one of the most unhealthy populations in the nation if you look at any of these indicators. So what we're trying to suggest, and that we're learning from Mrs. Lansdale, is every community has to take on this responsibility for themselves. Help is not going to come from the federal government, the state government, or maybe some resources. Superman is not coming, Batman, the Wonder Woman. No one is coming to help us to figure out how do we improve the community and population's health of the people in our community. And so we think that every community has to take up this charge for themselves, and we must start looking at everything through the lens of health. And I'll close with this, is that the research shows a lot of things, but two important things is this, is that the health of a population and a community can be predicted based on the education levels of the people in the community and the income. So poverty drives education levels. We know that from research. So the health is based on the income levels, the education levels. So we can't get around trying to improve the education levels for individuals. If we do that, they can qualify and benefit from better job training, get better employment, their incomes can increase, and that can gradually change the trajectory of a community. Again, I think COVID-19 really should arrest us to the need for us to focus on improving the community and population health outcomes of our people. We have almost no one moving here, net zero immigration. We have a large out-migration, some of our fairest and our brightest. The third highest rate of brain drain in the country from any city is Charleston, West Virginia, the city's capital. We have no choice but to develop the people that we have. And so we got to focus on trying to improve their health, improve the communities where they live so they can be healthier, more productive workers. So we start looking at children diabetes, obesity. We're one of the most obese states in the nation. These things are going to cripple our workforce. So if we don't get serious about improving the community and the population's health of the people, we will not have a workforce to sustain our business community nor to grow it. So Sharon Lansdale may be one of the most important people in the state of West Virginia that a lot of people haven't heard of, but she's going in communities by communities, working with communities to help them realize you got to take control and responsibility of trying to improve the health of the populations and the community where they live.
Good deal. It's a good resource for folks to research and learn more about. So next question this can be either Dave or Scott or both of you. We'll see who jumps at it. There's a good one in the chat here. How do you instill in people the confidence that they can make a shift from traditional jobs such as coal mining? And then the question sort of goes on to explain a dynamic in West Virginia where we have young people that want to work and are very helpful and have good attitudes, but also just feel like there's nothing here for them, a sense of hopelessness, if you will. So how do you instill in people the confidence that they can make a shift from some of the more traditional jobs we've known in the past?
Hey, Dave, I'll take a stab at that. Then if you jump in, that's fine. If you take a look at the mining and timbering industry in West Virginia over the past 10 years, I looked at the data this morning. We have less than 20,000 people directly affiliated with timbering and mining in West Virginia. So you can see how significantly that's changed over the past decade. And really over the past 5 years, it's taken a dramatic decrease. One of the challenges when you think about workforce development is convincing those miners who have some extraordinary skills, whether it's welding or manufacturing or fabricating, heavy equipment operators, is to get them to move, because a lot of the jobs now that they have the skill set to do are not located in Logan, or not located in Mingo County, or not located in McDowell County. And so that those folks are going to have to move or drive a long ways to take on those other jobs. And let's face it, the mining industry has provided a good living for a lot of West Virginians, you know, for 100 years. And so getting those same wages, I can't recall, but I think the last average annual salary for a miner was like $72,000, which is pretty significant in West Virginia. And so convincing a miner that he or she is going to have to travel north for an hour and maybe take a 30% pay cut in order to stay employed is a difficult proposition. And so I think that, you know, that's the biggest challenge when you think about workforce development, is convincing those highly skilled workers that they can do other stuff, but it's getting them to sort of start over in a new industry with a new company and then working their way themselves back up to that annual salary. So it's a great question. It's a question of cultural change in a lot of cases. It's a selling point for other industries to convince those highly skilled, and you know, those folks have great work ethics. People who've worked in the mining industry, you heard Reverend Watts talking about growing up in the southern coal fields. My dad worked for Island Creek Coal Company for 44 years, so they have a good work ethic. They like the work, they enjoy the work they do. It's just getting them comfortable either with that drive or changing occupations in a new industry.
That's really well said. You know, I think what I'm hearing there, Scott, too, is just based off the data over a 10, 20-year trajectory, there's really not a choice, right? If we want to be in the workforce, we want to have a viable economy, we're going to have to figure out how to be effective in multiple different sectors and industries. Is that right?
Yeah, Brandon, you're exactly right. King used to be coal, or coal used to be king, rather. That's not the case anymore. And so as the state diversifies, and I think West Virginia's been behind on that front, because we have been so dependent on coal. And then when you start to see a decline in coal, if you look at what happened, you know, 7 to 10 years ago, the impact of losing those mining jobs on the economy of West Virginia, it's been huge. And so it's been a steep learning curve. But I think when you look at the legislature today, you look at some of the new initiatives across the state, you can see more and more that we're starting to transition away from those coal sector jobs into different industries.
Dave, did you want to add anything on that?
No, I think Scott really wrapped that up really well. I mean, I will take the second half, because there's kind of two parts to that question. That person said, since moving to West Virginia, I have met so many people, especially young people, who are hardworking and helpful. However, some of them have the mindset that there is nothing for them to do here, even though there are opportunities for them. Well, I think we have to change the way that we talk to people about West Virginia. You know, a lot of times we're our own worst enemy. And, you know, I think we have that Appalachian fatalism and sort of inferiority complex, and we beat ourselves up. When you actually look at the data of West Virginia, you know, we're actually a good business climate, and we do have companies moving here. We have some really big IT companies. You know, anytime I want to get too down on West Virginia, I like to dial up a good Brad Smith webinar. I mean, you know, I think we do need to watch how we are maybe too rough on ourselves. And so I think that we need to talk about a lot of the good opportunities and the good parts of West Virginia. And I think during COVID, I don't know if you all feel this way, and you can hop in on this, but I think we've seen West Virginia through a different lens, you know. And I think that maybe Secretary Gonch got at this earlier in the day, and Mike Graney, you know, that West Virginia is looking pretty good in, through the lens of COVID, we're growing, and we have the companies that are moving here. And I think we're going to see more of that. We're going to see more nearshoring. We're going to see people looking for a place like West Virginia that I always called Colorado without the crowds. I think we're going to see some really neat people coming into Southern West Virginia, and so I'm kind of bullish on it. And so, but I think that's maybe sometimes we're our own worst enemy when it comes to talking to kids about West Virginia.
Brandon, this is Sarah. And
Yeah.
if I pop in, I have to, because I'm just so passionate about this issue, Dave. And this is why Brandon and I and Stephanie joined together to host the first statewide student leadership conference this Friday. Because you're right, Dave, it is a cultural thing. We are hard on ourselves. And so we have 180 students all across West Virginia registered for this Friday's conference. Brad D. Smith is our keynote for the conference, and it's really to get them invested in West Virginia. And we want to share with them, how can they be successful right here? You can write your own story and be successful right here in West Virginia. So we're trying to change the culture. We're trying to inspire our young people, and we hope that the student conference will just continue to grow and be very impactful. So thank you for your comments.
Absolutely. So, and that's Friday. So that's right upon us, and very exciting for sure. I wanted to hear a little bit more from Charlotte on the customization. I think building on this point, traditionally, I think in workforce development, we wanted to get trained and then enter an industry, and then you could maybe stay in that industry 30, 40 years, probably had a pension, and that was the model. And then, we're in a post-globalization society where that's not really how workforce systems and employment systems work anymore. So I feel like that a lot of what we're hearing today is about being flexible, being nimble. You've talked about the importance of customization, Charlotte. I wonder if you could just say a little bit more about that, and what does it take for a customized approach to really work?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Let me, if I could, before I do that, add one thing to the previous conversation that Scott and Dave were talking about. We have a workforce study that is just wrapping up, that we partnered with AEP, the West Virginia Development Office, and Marshall University. And what that workforce study has done is it has gone out and much to the thanks of Scott Adkins in his office, and actually interviewed job seekers, employers, a whole realm of people. We're way over 1,000 people now who have responded to this survey, actually looking for transferable skill sets, if you would. When we talk about transferable skill sets, those are exactly what Scott was just talking about, the welders and the coal miners who have wonderful skills. And they're very transferable to another industry, say aviation, or another industry that we could potentially attract to West Virginia, or we have in West Virginia already. So when this concludes, which will conclude here in about a month, what we are hoping to have here is a list of potential industry sectors that the actual skill sets that exist in West Virginia are transferable and applicable to those industries. And we plan to share that. We have a whole group of stakeholders that are involved in this study from around the state, and we plan to share that through the development office, through all the local EDAs, everybody working in job creation, basically, so that everyone really has an understanding of what the skill sets are here and how they can be transferable to a specific industry. So I just wanted to add that to that conversation, and give a big thanks to both Dave and Scott. The development office and workforce has been terrific in helping us. Now, sorry about that. In regard to customization, very important for many, many years. When we talk about workforce development at RCBI, the backbone to what we have done is customized training, being flexible, training the entire individual, training on site, having people come to our facility. Whatever works is the way you provide the training. Being able to train someone on a specific set of controls that a company has, you're just not going to walk in and know that. But being able to provide that to make that person a value when they hit the floor, so that there's not extra time needed from the company to train. Customization is exactly what it sounds like. It's just customizing the training to what's needed, where it's needed, and when it's needed. Did that help? Did that answer?
It does, yeah. And I think it's just a good reminder of, I think it connects to this conversation we're having of what does workforce development look like in a modern economy. And I think actually realizing that West Virginia could be fairly well positioned for some of these strategies, being a smaller state, maybe being more of a rural state. The broadband access is big, but we may just well be positioned for what this new, less industrialized economy might look like. So I appreciate that. I wanted to go to Reverend Watts, sort of on the similar point. You had a phrase that I noted here: place-based and people-focused. So I think being creative, being nimble and flexible, being willing to customize, being collaborative are all themes today, but also place-based and people-focused. Could you say just a little bit more about what you mean, especially on the place-based, and give us maybe an example or two of how that plays out? Oh, and be sure and come off mute there, Reverend. Happens to the best of us.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We got you. Yes, sir.
Yes, I mean, we do not levitate between the earth and between the heavens, right? We're always physically located somewhere. People, families live physically somewhere on a piece of terra firma, on a piece of ground in the geography. Children live in a house, on the street. They attend a school somewhere. So I believe all solutions have to have a place-based component to it. What am I doing to improve the health and the welfare of the place where people live, so that making the right decisions become easier to make because we're creating opportunities for them? So it has to be, we have to have place-based solutions. There are things that are transferable to any place, right? But there has to be some specific solutions, some specific things that are hardwired to a place. So what are we doing to help the people in this place? I've given the last 25 years of my life trying to understand the complexities of the west side of Charleston. How can it be within a rock's throw of the economic epicenter of the state, of the political epicenter of the state, of the cultural epicenter of the state? How can it be one of the largest residence neighborhoods in the entire state? We'd be the 10th largest city if we would be severed from the west side of Charleston with a population of over 18,000 people, about that of Fairmont or Beckley. But how could we be one of the most unhealthy places in the country to live? How can we be one of the poorest communities to live when we have $335 million every year of annual income? So trying to figure that, I begin to realize is that there has not been a commitment to this place. There's been economic outmigration of this place. There's been a drain of the middle class from this place. This place is littered with slum and blighted neighborhoods. So people look at the place and they don't value the place. And if you don't value the place, you don't value the people that live in the place. So there's been out and disinvestment, there's been out migration, and there's been a devaluation of the place and a devaluation of the people that live in the place. So that's what I'm talking. We got to value the place, and we got to value the people that live in that place. And we got to create a way of developing that place and developing the people that live there. If I could say just one final thing, this is what's wrong. We don't recognize that. Children live in a place and they are totally dependent upon the adults to create a wholesome environment for them to live in. If the adults don't do it, they live in an unhealthy place and they grow up to be unhealthy children. If I would ask you a simple question, what is the one industry in the United States of America for which every year there's an oversupply of well-qualified workers? What is that one industry? You know it. It's professional sports. In professional sports, there is an oversupply every year of qualified applicants. Why? Because the whole society buys into developing that workforce. It starts in every neighborhood, every community where they build football fields and basketball gymnasiums and tennis courts, and we finance the systems through our own resources when our children are young and through the school system when they're older. So by the time they get to high school, the high school has sort of severed the wheat from the chaff, if you will, and the colleges are finishing schools to send these people to play college sports to prepare them for the professional ranks. Why don't we take that same approach in developing the workforce and apply it to developing the workforce? It has to be place-based and it has to be people-focused. So lastly, I'll say, that's why I'm trying to bring attention to this idea, and it goes over people's head when I say it, but I want you to listen to what I'm getting ready to say here. In the state of West Virginia, every year, we suspend over 18,000 children from the public school. That is directly affecting and supporting the achievement gap, the low literacy and numeracy skills. They're missing so much instruction. It drives them into truancy, many of them. It drives them to the juvenile justice system, because truancy is a status offense that brings kids to the juvenile justice system. It leads to dropouts. It leads to them on the schoolyard to prison pipeline. This is happening and no one is really paying attention to it. So if we're going to change this trajectory, we got to pay attention to these children in these places, in these schools, that we're spending over $12,000 a year to educate them, but many of them are being suspended and not being educated. And then down the road, we're dealing with the problem that's created when they become adults, uneducated, unskilled, unemployable, and angry with the whole world. And they're the ones that fill our prisons and our jails. What I'm trying to suggest, we will not have a workforce unless we realize that the future workforce is in places and they're in schools, and we've got to get more out of our schools. I'm not criticizing the school system, but that's where they are. And that's what all these years of studying this stuff and writing about and analyze it, I begin to realize it's right in front of me. If I don't help these kids down at Mercy Snow Westside Elementary learn to read and to write, and if they're not fairly literate before they leave that middle school in the 5th grade, and if they head to Westside Middle School, where according to Howard Swint, 70% of them are reading on the 3rd grade level, my community is perpetually going to be poor, marginalized, and it's going to be stuck. And that's what's wrong with many communities in West Virginia, but it's also what's kind of wrong with our state. Some communities like the West Side, the growth of our community is stunted and it's stifled, and we can't get a breakthrough. And what I've written about is we do not have the capacity right now in our neighborhood to educate children to a high level, even though in our schools we have the highest per capita expenditure in the state. That's what's happening all through down Southern West Virginia. I'm from Southern West Virginia, right? Those communities no longer have the capacity to produce high numbers of high achieving children. The sooner we accept that and acknowledge it, maybe we'll be prepared to make the investments and the commitment necessary to change these communities. But we're going to find it's going to be place-based, it's going to be people-focused, there's no silver bullet. We got to roll our sleeves up and we got to dive into these tough places, and we got to say to people, come and help us, support what we're trying to do. And that's what I'm talking about. And it's taken me a lot of years to figure it out, but I began to realize there's no easy way. My father taught me something when I was a kid. My father was a coal miner, but he was a gifted mechanic and carpenter. He would always say, a carpenter I'm not, but a tack I'll drive. And I remember him telling me one time, he says, he gave me a little assignment to do, working on a car. And I tried to do it a different way. And here's what he came to me, he said to me, he says, your problem is you don't want to accept that sometimes there's no easy way to do a hard job. I told you how to do it, and I told you what it was going to take. But because it was hard, you wanted, now you wasted all this time. And that's what's happening there. Place-based and people-focused, it's hard. But it's what's going to take, because we're only going to inspire our children by proximity, by being in that battle with them, let them know we really value them. And whatever it takes, we're going to fight for them to get the support they need. Place-based, people-focused. We're going to do a major conference on this in January. Hopefully you guys will support us. We'll wait till everybody's stuff got out of the way, like this conference and what the Great Canoe Valley Foundation and others are doing. And we're going to do a conference on poverty and community health solutions, We're going to deal specifically with solutions, and we're going to roll. Here's what our model looks like of in place-based and people-focused.
Look forward to that.
Thank you.
And great message. Thank you. Thank you. And amen.
can put this
Place-based,
off and play right
people-focused. That's a good.
Yes, Scott's going to pass the offering plate.
So, and actually, that's a good segue. Mr. Adkins, you're going to have the final word. We're at time. We're at 2:15. So I want to go to Scott Adkins to close this out. You have a statewide perspective on this issue, workforce development. I would love to just hear an hour, 15 minutes into this conversation. Just what your closing thoughts are and what your closing message is for how we get it right when it comes to workforce development in West Virginia.
Well, it's a great segue to end the conference with, or end this session with, Brandon. So thank you for that. And I think you've heard it today, West Virginia, and you think about the workforce development system in West Virginia, in some ways is the best kept secret. We do have some great opportunities in being a small state. And, you know, Reverend Watts has participated in a lot of different initiatives at Workforce. And I tell you, under Secretary Gotch's leadership, we've been able to bring a lot of different groups together. And so being in a small state where everybody pretty much knows everybody, it's easier in most cases to align really what it takes to get there. And so it's kind of exciting to see this particular work group and to think about the opportunities that we have in West Virginia when you think about workforce development. And so I think West Virginia, I didn't participate this morning, but it sounds like Secretary Gotch pretty much said the same thing, but I think West Virginia is pretty well aligned with all the major stakeholders and the key partners in making workforce development work in West Virginia. So thank you for that. And Brandon, again, from Workforce, thank you for the opportunity to participate today.
Sure thing. Two closing thoughts. Reverend Watts, folks are interested in the conference that you mentioned for January. So we will be sure and share information on that through the Small Communities, Big Solutions listserv. And also for this group, we want to do a follow-up in 2021 as well on Workforce West Virginia and do even a little bit of a deeper dive, perhaps a half a day. This is every year, this is one of the most well-attended sessions. This is clearly a hot topic that people are really passionate about. So we're looking at a little bit of a deeper dive through the Small Communities, Big Solutions platform in 2021. So much more to come. Stay tuned. But for now, thank you for a really good, energetic panel. I learned a lot. I have a ton of notes myself, and we're going to keep this conversation going. So thank you to our panelists and thank you to our audience.